Hi, welcome to Smartest Guys in the Classroom. It's now time for what I like to call you, yes, you in the back with your hand raised. Sorry, I don't know your name yet. What's your question? Today's question comes from Andrew.
Yes, Andrew wrote us, and he asked the following questions. What are your opinions on the great man theory of teaching history? Oh boy, do I have some opinions. Look, I think the theory comes back from a day when there was a deliberate attempt to try to take people from history and turn them into like biblical role model type figures. So George Washington becomes a godlike figure. If you visit the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., there's literally a mural in the rotunda that's called the deification of George Washington, or George Washington becoming a god. And it shows the panels of him going from lowly earthly farmer to sitting at the right hand of God in heaven or something like that. And I think it was convenient, and I think it was a way for parents to try to impart truths to their children. But I also think it's incredibly deceptive and problematic for a bunch of reasons. I would argue that rather than George Washington making America to a larger degree, America made George Washington. If you study his history, he made a lot of mistakes, and his advisors had to hold him back from doing really dumb things over and over again during the Revolutionary War until he kind of figured it out, and then he did some good stuff. I'm not saying he didn't do some good stuff, but he was a product of a time. So I think that's deceptive. But then I also think it's problematic because I think we establish unrealistic expectations for people who are alive today. So we say, well, you need to be George Washington. Well, I'm not George Washington. I'm just some kid, right? And I can't ever do that. I can't make a difference because I'm not George Washington, when really there were a lot of people who helped create George Washington. And so I'm a big fan of a more complex telling of history that acknowledges the nuances of human character and sinful nature and leaves room for us to make a difference on this planet.
We take a look at eugenics in biology class alongside looking at genetics and heredity. And part of that is Madison Grant, who wrote a book called The Passing of the Great Race, which had a lot of pseudoscience in it, try to substantiate ideas that what the Germans would call the Aryan race or the Nordic race were superior to the other races. The interesting thing about Madison Grant is he's also a very good guy in that he helped save the American bison, helped found the Redwood National Forest, or that didn't become a national park until I think like the 60s, but he laid the groundwork for that. And he did so much other conservation work and a lot of other good that you could categorize. But on the other side of the coin, he was kind of I don't know if we want to say closet racist or overtly racist.
If you publish a book
called The Passing,
I think that's not. I think you're out of the closet. I'm just going to say.
Yeah. So that realization, like you were saying, that historical figures are complex, and for how you teach them at different levels, that's a question for a different time. Like, how do you teach George Washington to a fifth grader versus to a junior or a senior in an AP U.S. history course? How much detail do you include to give them the best sense of what happened and why things happened the way they did?
Yeah, and I think one of the remnants of evidence of that great man theory still existing places is any teacher who makes their students memorize all of the presidents in order. Because I'm going to tell you, about 30% of them didn't matter. Like, they didn't do anything.
Poke? What?
Like, they entered the presidency with the theory the president should not do things. And then they spent their term not doing things.
That was George Washington too, right? Yeah. Aside from the Whiskey Rebellion or whatever it was.
Yeah, but I think he still, if we're going to get into like a whole history of
get in
George
the weeds
Washington,
of it.
He established a precedent for what it meant to be president because there'd never been a president before. So like he determined, I'm going to go by this title, and this is how I dress, and this is how I interact with other people. And then after I've been president for 2 terms, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to go back to normal life. And so like he established a lot of guardrails in our system that matter,
Yeah.
even if a lot of them were not becoming a dictator.
Yeah.
Still an important precedent.
Well, great. I hope that answers your question. Tune in sometime for more.
But only if you send them to us. Email
Yes.
us.
Please send us.
At
smartestguyspod@gmail.com.
That's smartestguyspod@gmail.com. Just send us any wacky questions you got, and we'll cover them here if they're worth it.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.